I'd like to start by saying Bharat Mata Ki Jai. So I've been a sannyasin living in Hawaii for 48 years, and I've been the editor of this magazine since 1979. And I've been tasked today to share our own global experience of publishing from the West. And also, I want to give you some perceptions on the evolution of Hinduism in the West. So our magazine's founder, Sadasivanathaswami, was an innovative spiritual leader whose global vision transformed the diaspora outside of India. He's really understood the power of the press, and he created this publication for the entire Dharmic world. He had traveled to dozens of countries in the 1970s, and in those travels he found out that the Hindus in Fiji didn't know that there were Hindus in Canada. The Hindus in Sri Lanka were unaware of their brothers and sisters in Trinidad or South Africa. That Mauritius Hindus knew little about Switzerland's Hindus. And so he commissioned us to connect our widely dispersed family through the magazine. And from that day, we have gathered thousands of stories from every continent. So I want to share some of the milestones of our journey so far before I take you into a history. On July 5th of 1996, a sheep named Dolly was born in Scotland. This is a special sheep. Hello, Dolly. Here she is in Scotland. Dolly's birth began a firestorm in my country about the ethics of cloning mammals and ultimately cloning human beings. Bill Clinton, the president at the time, created a Blue Ribbon Committee to reach out to the 5 major U.S. religions, including Hinduism, for their stance on the ethics of this human cloning idea. The president's panel asked Hinduism Today editors to submit a dharmic perspective on human cloning. And I take this as an example of the media's ability to inform government policy. 3 years later, Hinduism Today redefined patient treatment in the U.S. when the Texas Medical Association approached us to help them revise a book on 33 medical conditions. The book was called Faith of Our Patients, and it's a physician's guide for treating patients in accord with their religious beliefs. Hindu perceptions on such matters had too long been neglected in the West, and so we accepted that challenge, and we reached out to spiritual leaders all over the globe, assembling their responses. Our editorial team published a 24-page summary of medical ethics, which is available free online. In 2009, we were called upon to compose the first Hindu declaration of climate change. We presented this declaration at the Parliament of the World's Religions in Melbourne, Australia that year. Surveying the field of Hindu media, we are prompted to call for a more aesthetic, thoughtful, a more penetrating dharmic journalism, which stresses skilled writing and graphics that will lift the spirit, inform the intellect, and embolden pride. You may recognize most of these modern-day luminaries on the screen, chosen for their international impact on our faith and their full-time commitment to their work. In fact, if anyone here knows of a candidate for the Hindu of the Year award next year, we would love to hear from you. We also provide a free digital news feed called Hindu Press International, which is issued daily on a wide variety of dharmic subjects and events. So now I want to turn the clock back to see how profoundly yoga and Hinduism have evolved in the last 100 years in the U.S. media. Compare this 1911 image of an ash-covered yogi with this sultry invitation to yoga in an upscale spa. Back in 1911, Current Literature magazine published an article called The Heathen Invasion of America, which concluded, literally, yoga means the path that leads to wisdom. Actually, it's providing the way that leads to domestic infelicity and insanity and death. Time put yoga on its cover. 100 years later, Time magazine wrote this: stars do it, sports do it, Judges in the highest courts do it. Let's do it, that yoga thing. A path to enlightenment that winds back 5,000 years to its native India. Yoga has suddenly become so hot, so cool, so very this minute. Time put this on the cover twice, once in 2001 where they called it a science, and again in 2003 where they wrote of the potential for medical, mental, and physical health. Reading these Time magazine articles, you might think the media in my country was pointed in the right direction, but you would be wrong. Take, for example, the June 6th CNN article by Jessica Rivets, who spent 2 weeks in Rishikesh meeting with swamis and visiting ashrams and yoga schools. Her article spoke respectfully of the spiritual richness she encountered on the Ganges. And CNN had dozens of great photos of Jessica's pilgrimage. But they opted to go with the most bizarre photo possible, this 105-year-old yogi in a pretzel-like pose. An otherwise great article was marred by CNN's insolent choice. Happily, there's other forces at work in my country where yoga is so mainstream that you can now download more than 2,000 iPhone apps relating to yoga. Much to the consternation of Christian fundamentalists in my country, yoga is infiltrating the corporations, including these leading businesses that are all providing on-site yoga classes for their employees. Many who come into yoga in the West eventually go deep enough to discover Hinduism. In my country, yoga is definitely a major portal into the Hindu faith. More than 22 million Americans and 2 million Canadians practice yoga, driving a $20 billion industry there. You may not know that Michelle Obama holds children's yoga classes on the White House lawn. It's part of her effort to fight obesity in American kids, to get them physically active. She calls it a yoga garden, and she regularly brings professional teachers to the White House lawn. But while the First Lady does yoga with kids in Washington, things are moving in a different direction in a California school district near San Diego. There, yoga classes have been designed for children ages 6 to 11. It's a rather elaborate and beautifully designed program. And it all started with a 3 crore grant from a local KP Joyce Foundation to create a wellness program for kids. But for some, yoga is a 4-letter word and the path to perdition. So one group of parents asked a judge to stop classroom yoga, and the attorneys in the case argued that teaching Hatha Yoga promotes Indian spirituality. Conservative radio commentators insisted that yoga is religious doctrination and has no place in a public school in a secular country. On the other side, parents hired attorneys to defend their children's right to learn yoga in school. And on July 1, 2013, the presiding judge, John Mayer, ruled that yoga could stay in the U.S. classroom, opening the door for thousands of schools to adopt similar programs. This is not the only court battle in my litigious country. As of June 1 of this year, the U.S. government had issued 1,876 copyrights relating to yoga, 567 patents, and 2,993 trademarks. Yoga teachers in my country are trying to shackle each other's hands. They're suing for trademark and patent infringement of asanas and yoga terms. And our team in Hawaii is following these various court battles. Consider another media shift. Lisa Miller, a senior Newsweek editor, wrote a provocative editorial recently titled, "We Are All Hindus Now," we meaning Americans, complete with this Ganesha imagery. She reported that 33% of Americans cremate their dead, 25% believe in reincarnation, and fully 65% believe that other spiritual paths are valid. In the decades ahead, we are going to see Hinduism's profundities and passions rediscovered not only abroad, but dare we hope here in Bharat as well. I'd like to conclude with the U.S. media's treatment of Mr. Modi's recent visit to the United States, which has already changed perceptions there. The press, normally dismissive of Bharat's leaders, adored him, writing effusively of his intelligence, his stamina, his clear commitment to change. As you all may have seen, he gained almost rock star status at Madison Square Garden. And most of you witnessed a Gandhian moment when he fasted for days on water during the Washington events, impressing Americans with his spiritual discipline. And it won't surprise anyone in this room that the most negative reporting came from his homeland. Still, that visit caused a change in my country's attitudes towards Bharat Mata, a change that I suspect will endure. My staff in Hawaii is available to help anyone at the Journal here in India to implement new technologies. And you can learn more about our work in the West and global efforts to spread Hinduism here at www.hinduismtoday.com. Om Namah Shivaya.